They had been 22 and 24 years old for 43 years. Wherever you are listening to me today, whether from your living room in Paris, your office in Lyon, or even walking the streets of Marseille, I invite you to subscribe to our channel to discover more unsettling mysteries of European history. Because the story I am about to tell you defies everything we think we know about human nature itself. It is 1871 in Vienna. The Austro-Hungarian Empire is passing through a tense period, but in the heart of the imperial capital, in the prestigious Innerstadt district, stands an elegant four-story residence with facades adorned with gilded stucco. The Val residence, known throughout Viennese high society, houses one of the most respected families of the expatriate French aristocracy. Dr. Heinrich Brenner nervously adjusts his glasses as he climbs the marble steps of the Val residence. The personal physician of the family for 15 years, he has seen 3 generations of Viennese aristocrats born, grow up, and die. But what he is about to witness on this October morning will shake his worldview forever. Dr. Brenner, thank heaven you came so quickly, murmurs Gertrude, the gray-haired housekeeper who greets him in the entrance hall. Her hands tremble slightly as she takes his coat. Mr. Duval is waiting for you in the blue salon. Anton Duval stands before the tall windows overlooking the Ringstrasse. At his age, this once imposing man now carries the weight of unspeakable grief. His stooped shoulders and entirely white hair testify to a life marked by loss. His wife, Marguerite, carried away by tuberculosis 10 years earlier, had given him 3 children, Claire, Isolde, and their elder brother Alexander. Heinrich, my friend, he says in a hoarse voice as he turns, I must tell you something that will seem unusual. Dr. Brenner sets his leather briefcase on the mahogany coffee table. Anton, you have known me long enough to know that nothing in my profession surprises me anymore. Really? A bitter smile crosses Anton's face. Then tell me, Heinrich, how do you explain that my daughters look exactly the same as they did 25 years ago? The silence that follows this statement seems to stretch into infinity. In the next room, the steady ticking of the grandfather clock resonates like a metronome marking the passage of time that, by all appearances, has ceased to exist for Claire and Isolde Duval. Anton, I'm afraid I don't understand. Follow me. He climbs the marble staircase with its carved railings. The family portraits adorning the walls seem to watch their progress with a critical eye. On the second floor, Anton stops before a massive oak door adorned with floral motifs. They take their tea at this exact hour every day. Watch carefully, Heinrich, and remember the last time you saw them. It was Christmas 1846. 25 years have passed. Anton gently opens the door. In a salon with walls covered in blue silk, 2 young women of striking beauty sit facing each other around a Sevres porcelain tea table. Claire, the elder, wears a burgundy velvet dress that highlights her light chestnut hair elegantly pinned in a chignon. Isolde, more petite, is dressed in an emerald green taffeta gown. Their movements are perfectly graceful, almost mechanical. Dr. Brenner feels his knees give way. He remembers their faces perfectly, their smiles, their crystalline voices. But what strikes him most profoundly is the total lack of recognition in their eyes when they look up at him. Claire, Isolde, says Anton softly, do you remember Dr. Brenner? The 2 sisters exchange a blank look. Then Claire slightly inclines her head politely. Delighted to meet you, Doctor. Would you like to join us for tea? The voice is identical to the one he had heard a quarter century earlier. Every intonation, Every French accent mingled with Viennese charm. But something is missing in this perfect politeness, as if she were reciting a role learned by heart. Yes, gladly, he replies. Bally-eyed, Heinrich was unable to tear his gaze away from their immaculate faces. Not a wrinkle, not a mark of time. Their skin was disturbingly perfect, almost translucent under the golden light of the Viennese afternoon. Isolde poured the tea with surgical precision. "We received news from Paris this morning," she said in a neutral tone. "It seems the situation is improving after the troubles of the Commune." Heinrich frowned. The events of the Paris Commune had ended in May, 5 months earlier, yet the way Isolde spoke suggested she was hearing of them for the first time. "Indeed," he replied cautiously, "news travels slowly to Vienna." "That is clear to whom it may concern," she said with a mechanical smile. "Father keeps us informed of current events. Isn't it wonderful to have such a devoted father?" Anton looked away. Heinrich noticed a nearly imperceptible tension at the corner of his lips. The conversation continued for half an hour, a strange ritual of politeness, where every reply seemed lifted from a manual of etiquette. The sisters spoke of music, literature, and Parisian fashion, but always with the same emotional distance, as if observing the world through glass. When they descended to the salon, Heinrich felt as if he were emerging from a waking dream. Anton carefully closed the door and turned to his friend, his face marked by profound distress. "Now, Heinrich, tell me what you saw." "I don't understand, it's impossible. They look exactly—" Heinrich stopped, searching for words. "Anton, what happened to them?" "That, precisely, is what I want you to help me understand." Anton moved to his desk and retrieved a thick red leather dossier. "It all began in 1828. My daughters were, respectively, 22 and 24 years old. They fell ill with a mysterious fever that nearly claimed their lives." He opened the dossier and pulled out several letters. "Here is the correspondence I exchanged with the greatest doctors in Europe. None could identify the nature of their illness. For weeks, they raved, speaking strange voices, terrifying visions." Heinrich examined the documents. The letters bore the seals of the most prestigious medical faculties in London, Berlin, and even the Sorbonne in Paris. And then, one morning, they woke perfectly cured, but different. Anton sank heavily into his leather armchair. "At first I thought it was a father's gratitude. They seemed more beautiful, more perfect than before the illness. But months passed, then years, and they never aged. Never. Not a wrinkle, not a white hair, not even a change in the way they moved or spoke. But what is even more disturbing, Heinrich, is that they seem to have lost all capacity to learn. Every day they repeat exactly the same gestures, say the same words as if frozen in time." A shiver ran down the doctor's spine. "And Alexander, your son?" Anton's face hardened. "Alexander, he disappeared after his sister's recovery, one morning. We found his room empty. No trace, no message, as if he had vanished into thin air." Heinrich rose and paced the room, trying to collect his thoughts. Through the window he watched passers-by walking along the Ringstrasse, bundled in their autumn coats. The world continued to turn, seasons passed, generations succeeded one another. But here, in this elegant residence, time seemed suspended. "Anton, you must understand that what you ask me to believe defies all laws of nature and medicine." "I know, my friend, but look at this." Anton retrieved a daguerreotype from his desk. The image showed the two sisters in the same salon where Heinrich had just met them, wearing the same dresses, sporting the same smiles. At the bottom of the photograph, an ink inscription read, Claire and Isolde Duval, December 1828. Heinrich studied the photograph carefully, then looked up at Anton. You mean this photograph was taken 43 years ago? Exactly. And if you were to see them again tomorrow at the same hour, you would find them in the same position, wearing the same clothes, having the same conversation. Silence fell over the room. In the distance, the bells of St. Stephen's Cathedral struck 6 in the evening. Heinrich methodically put away his instruments in his briefcase, his movements slowed by astonishment. Anton, I need to think about all of this. What you describe, it requires a thorough investigation. That is exactly what I hope to hear. Anton escorted his friend to the door. But Heinrich, I beg you be discreet. If this story were to leak in Vienna, you have my word. As Heinrich Brenner descended the marble steps beneath the autumn sky of Vienna, he had no idea that he had just crossed the threshold of an investigation that would overturn his life and reveal a secret so terrible it would shake the very foundations of European society in his time. Duval, Claire, and Isolde continued to take their tea, tirelessly repeating the same graceful gestures, prisoners of an eternal present whose existence they no longer even suspected. 3 weeks had passed since Anton Duvall's revelation, and Dr. Heinrich Brenner had not found a moment of rest. In his medical office on the Graben, in the heart of Vienna, he had transformed his desk into a true investigative laboratory. Piles of medical books covered every available surface. Treatises on anatomy stood beside works on natural philosophy, and even a few volumes of European folklore that he had hunted down in second-hand bookstores in the Prater. On this November morning, a thick fog enveloped the imperial capital. Heinrich adjusted the flame of his oil lamp and resumed examining a document that had intrigued him for several days. A letter found in the archives of the General Hospital of Vienna, dated 1829 and signed by a certain Dr. Alistair Falcon. The letter was addressed to the hospital director and written in German mixed with French expressions. The handwriting was nervous, almost feverish. Dear Director, I must urgently report my observations regarding the events at the Duval family. What I have discovered calls into question everything we believe about life and death. I request an urgent audience, as I fear that remaining silent would make me complicit in an abomination. Heinrich frowned. This Dr. Falcon seemed to have been involved in the Duval sisters' case from the very beginning. Why had Anton never mentioned him? Heinrich decided to go immediately to the hospital archives to learn more. The General Hospital of Vienna, an imposing 18th-century Baroque building, houses in its basement a labyrinth of medical archives. Herr Wolfsgruber, the chief archivist, greeted Heinrich with some suspicion. A lean man with thick glasses, he ruled over the documents with the jealousy of a dragon guarding its treasure. Dr. Brenner, you know that access to the medical archives is strictly regulated. I would need official authorization to. Dr. Wolfsgruber, Heinrich interrupted, placing a few papers on the desk. This is a medical emergency. An entire family could be at risk. The archivist made the papers disappear with a discreet gesture. Naturally, Doctor, how can I help you? I am seeking all documents concerning a Dr. Alistair Falcon, as well as any medical records related to the Duval family between 1828 and 1830. Wolfsgruber disappeared into the depths of his archives for an hour. When he returned, his expression was troubled, and he carried a dusty wooden box. Doctor, here is what I found. But I must warn you, Dr. Falcon did not meet a happy end. Heinrich carefully opened the box. It contained several dozen documents, medical reports, correspondences, anatomical drawings, and what appeared to be a personal journal written in increasingly chaotic handwriting. The first document he examined was an official report dated March 15, 1829. Dr. Alistair Falcon, formerly a physician attached to the General Hospital of Vienna, was institutionalized by order of the Imperial Minister of Health due to chronic delusions and ramblings deemed dangerous to public order. The patient persists in affirming the existence of occult medical practices within Viennese high society. Heinrich felt a shiver run through him. He then took out Falcon's personal journal and began reading. The first pages, dated October 1828, were written in neat handwriting. I was called today to the Duval family to examine Mrs. Claire and Isolde, victims of a mysterious fever. Mr. Anton Duvall received me in his library and described the symptoms: delirium, convulsions, and, above all, abnormally low body temperature despite apparent fever. The young women speak in their sleep in a language I do not recognize, and their pupils remain dilated even in bright light. Heinrich turned the pages with growing excitement. Falcon's handwriting gradually became more nervous. November 5, 1828, troubling discovery. Examining the blood of the Duval sisters under a microscope, I observed cellular formations I have never seen before. The red blood cells appear to crystallize. I must investigate further. November 12, 1828. Anton Duval confided something that chilled my blood. He told me that a strange man had visited him a few days before his daughters fell ill. This individual, with a cadaverous appearance according to Anton's own words, allegedly offered a definitive remedy against mortality. In exchange, he demanded the family's eldest son. November 20, 1828. Alexander Duvall disappeared last night. I found traces of a struggle in his room and an acrid odor I cannot identify. Anton refuses to involve the authorities. He claims his son has gone on a journey, but his hands tremble when he speaks of it. Heinrich paused his reading and lifted his. Heinrich turned his eyes toward the archivist, Herwulf Scruber. What exactly happened to Dr. Falcon? He was found dead in his cell at the Steinhoff Asylum in 1834, an apparent suicide according to the official report. But the guards told strange stories. He would wake up each night screaming names that no one could understand. Heinrich resumed his reading. The last pages of the journal were almost illegible, the handwriting degenerating into feverish scribbles. December 3, 1828, they have returned, the cadaverous man and his accomplices. I saw their figures in the courtyard of the Val residence. He carried a black iron box. Anton opened the gates without resistance. May God forgive us all. December 4, 1828, the Duval sisters are healed, but they are no longer the same people. Their eyes reflect nothing anymore, as if their souls have been replaced. Why must I uncover the truth? December 10, 1828, I followed the cadaverous man to the catacombs of St. Stephen's. There he met others of his kind. I overheard fragments of their conversation: fraternity estigia, perpetual conservation, transfer of vital essence. He spoke of a network stretching across Europe. The last journal entry was dated December 24, 1828. They know I know. My days are numbered. If anyone finds this journal, let it be known that the Duval sisters are only the beginning. This Estigia fraternity includes members of the highest European nobility. Their goal? To conquer death by transferring the vital essence of one person to another. Alexander Duvall is not dead. He has become a human battery, kept alive somewhere to sustain the eternal youth of his sisters. And he is not the only one. Heinrich slammed the journal shut, his hands trembling. Around him, the stone vaults of the archives suddenly felt oppressive. He quickly gathered all the documents and slid them into his briefcase. Herwolf Scruber, I strictly forbid you from mentioning my visit to anyone. This is a matter of public safety. The archivist nodded nervously. Naturally, doctor, but be careful. These archives seem to bring misfortune to all who delve into them. Heinrich left the hospital in a state of deep turmoil. The revelations from Falken's journal opened terrifying possibilities. If these claims were true, the case of the Duval sisters was only part of a much larger conspiracy involving a secret organization operating across Europe. Back in his office, he spread all the documents on his large work table. A plan began to form in his mind. He had to trace this mysterious Estigia fraternity and discover what had become of Alexander Duvall. But above all, he had to understand the exact nature of the process keeping Claire and Isolde in their state of eternal youth. As he lit his pipe to think, Heinrich was unaware that just a few streets away, in a dark salon in the aristocratic Josefstadt district, three men in black suits were discussing his case with particular interest. Dr. Brenner is becoming troublesome, one hissed, his voice like a snake. He's asking too many questions about the Val affair. Should we eliminate him? Asked another, his gaunt features eerily reminiscent of the cadaverous man described in Falken's journal. Not yet. He could be useful, but watch him closely, and if necessary, the man made an eloquent gesture. In the foggy streets of Vienna, the shadow of the Estigia fraternity was gradually spreading, and Heinrich Brenner had just taken his first steps into a world where the boundary between science and the occult no longer existed. On December 3, an unusually violent snowstorm swept through Vienna. In his apartment on the Graben, Heinrich Brenner had barely slept for 3 days. The revelations from Falken's journal had shattered his worldview, and he now knew he could not retreat from his investigation. That morning he made a decision. He would return to the Duval residence, but this time he would search the house from top to bottom. If Alexander had truly been transformed into a human battery, as Falken claimed, he must be imprisoned somewhere within the estate. Wrapped in his thick wool coat, Heinrich trudged through the snowy streets of the Ringstrasse. The Baroque facades of Vienna seemed frozen beneath their white mantles, creating a winter wonderland that cruelly contrasted with the horror he was about to uncover. Anton Duval greeted him in the entrance hall with unusual nervousness. The man seemed even older since their last meeting, his features deeply etched by worry. Heinrich, I did not expect you so soon. The weather. Anton, we must speak. I have discovered troubling elements concerning the state of your daughters. He sat in the blue salon, where a fire crackled cheerfully in the hearth. In stark contrast to the warm atmosphere, the conversation that followed would plunge the two men into the abyss of human nature. Anton, do you know a Dr. Alistair Falken? Anton's face fell instantly. He set down his teacup with a trembling hand and looked away. Where did you hear that name? In the hospital archives. Falken was present during your daughter's illness, but more importantly, he left a detailed account of what actually happened here in 1828. Anton sprang to his feet, and paced the room like a caged animal. Heinrich, you don't understand. If certain people learn you're digging into this story. Who Anton? This estige of fraternity Falcon mentioned. The name hit like an explosion. Anton froze, his face drained of color. My God, you know. I know a cadaverous-looking man visited you in 1828. I know Alexander disappeared the very night your daughters mysteriously recovered. And I know you've been lying for 43 years about the true circumstances of their healing. Anton collapsed into his armchair, suddenly very old. Heinrich, you cannot imagine what it is to watch these children die before your eyes. Marguerite had just passed. Claire and Isolde were agonizing, and Alexander was the only one who could save them. What do you mean? The man, the one Falcon called the cadaverous man, he explained the process to me. To keep two people alive eternally, you must drain the vital essence from a third, Alexander. My son was born. He agreed to sacrifice himself for his sisters. A shiver of horror ran through Heinrich. Where is he, Anton? Where are you keeping Alexander? I cannot tell you. It is too dangerous. Anton, look at me. Heinrich grabbed the old man by the shoulders. I am a doctor. If your son has been kept alive artificially for 43 years, he is probably suffering horribly. You must let me examine him. The silence that followed was broken only by the crackle of the fire and the whistle of wind through the shutters. Finally, Anton lifted his head. In his eyes, Heinrich read infinite suffering. Follow me, but Heinrich, prepare yourself for the worst. He left the salon and led the way to the rear of the house. Anton produced a complex set of keys and unlocked a door hidden behind a tapestry depicting a hunting scene. A stone staircase descended into the mansion's cellars. The air grew colder and damper as they sank into the building's depths. Anton lit an oil lamp, casting dancing shadows on the bare stone walls. This part of the house dates back to the Middle Ages, he explained in a low voice. It once served as a wine cellar and a refuge during the Turkish sieges of Vienna. They passed through several vaulted rooms before reaching a massive iron door studded with strange symbols Heinrich did not recognize. Anton hesitated for a moment before inserting an intricately wrought key into the lock. Heinrich, what you are about to see must never leave this cellar. Swear it to me. I swear it. The door creaked open. An acrid, medicinal smell spilled into the hallway. Anton raised his lamp, and Heinrich discovered a sight that would haunt his nights forever. The circular chamber was filled with a complex apparatus blending modern technology and occult symbols. In the center, on a black marble table, lay a human figure connected to a network of tubes and metal wires. Glass vials containing liquids of various colors were arranged around the table, some gently boiling over blue flames. But what struck Heinrich most was the face of the man lying on the table. Despite the 43 years that had passed, he immediately recognized Alexander Duvall. His features had not changed a jot since his disappearance, but his wide-open eyes stared at the ceiling with an expression of infinite agony. My God, Heinrich whispered as he approached. Is he conscious? Yes, Anton said, his voice broken. He has been conscious since day one. He sees, he hears, he feels everything, but he cannot move or speak. It is the price to pay to keep his sisters alive. Heinrich knelt beside the marble table. Alexander's eyes moved slightly to follow his motions. In that gaze, the doctor read a silent plea that tore at his soul. The man was 26 years old, the age he had been at his disappearance, and yet perfectly preserved, but the tubes entering his arms and chest testified to a monstrous process. How does it work? Heinrich asked, his medical training asserting itself despite the horror before him. I don't understand all the details, Anton admitted. The members of the fraternity explained that Alexander's vital essence is constantly extracted and purified by their devices, then redistributed to Claire and Isolde through their food and drink. Through what, Anton? Their meals and beverages. Every meal they consume contains a portion of their brother's life force. Heinrich straightened, staggering. You mean they are feeding on their own brother without even knowing it? They remember nothing since 1828. Their consciousness was erased during the process. They live in a perpetual time loop, endlessly repeating the same day in December 1828. Heinrich studies the devices more closely. Some tubes contain a reddish liquid that flows slowly. Others hold a transparent fluid that glows faintly in the dim light. Graduated dials display incomprehensible measurements, and a series of levers apparently regulate the various flows. In terms of technology, it surpasses anything modern science knows. Where does it come from? Heinrich asks. The estige of fraternity has existed for centuries, Heinrich, Anton explains. Its members are aristocrats, scientists, occultists who have devoted their lives to conquering death. They possess knowledge that European universities cannot even imagine. Suddenly, a slight movement draws Heinrich's attention. Alexander's eyes are filled with tears, silently rolling down his temples. The doctor leans toward him and whispers, Alexander, if you can hear me, blink once for yes, twice for no. One blink then, after a pause, another blink. Do you want me to help you? One firm, almost desperate blink. Heinrich turns to Anton, who watches with a look of deep anguish. Anton, we cannot let this continue. This is a crime against humanity. Heinrich, you do not understand the consequences. If we interrupt the process, Alexander will die within minutes, and Claire and Isolde will age 43 years in the span of an hour. They will crumble before your eyes, but at least they would have peace, and Alexander would finally be freed from this nightmare. I cannot, Heinrich. They are my children, all my children. The doctor takes one last look at Alexander's face before heading toward the exit. Anton, I will think about this situation, but know that I cannot remain complicit in this horror any longer. As he climbs to the upper floors, Heinrich hears a sound behind them that chills him to the bone. A muffled, dull groan coming from the depths of the earth. The silent cry of Alexander Duvall, prisoner of his own body for more than 4 decades. Back in the blue salon, the two men sit in silence for long minutes. Outside, the storm intensifies, as if nature itself expresses its fury at the abominations taking place in the Duval residence. Heinrich, Anton finally says, you must understand that there is no simple solution to this situation. The fraternity has members all across Europe. If I betray them, they will kill me, and then they will come for you. What do you mean? They already know you are investigating the matter. Last night, 3 men in black suits visited me and asked very precise questions about your research. A shiver runs down Heinrich's spine. What did you tell them? Nothing, but they will return, Heinrich, and next time, they will not be satisfied with questions alone. At that moment, the housekeeper Gertrude bursts into the salon, visibly panicked. Mr. Duval, forgive me for interrupting, but there are men at the door. They demand to see Dr. Brenner. Anton and Heinrich exchange a terrified glance. Through the window, they see three dark silhouettes standing in the snow, motionless like statues. Heinrich, you must leave now via the service entrance. But it is too late. The front door opens without being unlocked, and the three men enter the hall. The first, cadaverously thin, wears a top hat and a black frock coat. His pale blue eyes seem to pierce the soul. The other two, younger but equally sinister, flank him like bodyguards. "Mr. Duval," the top-hatted man says in a hissing voice, "we must have a conversation with your guest." Heinrich rises, trying to steady his trembling hands. He instinctively knows he is facing representatives of the mysterious Estigia fraternity, and that his life has irrevocably entered a world where the normal rules of existence no longer apply. "Dr. Brenner," the cadaverous man continues, "you have consulted documents not intended for you. We would like to know your intentions." I do not know what you mean." A cold smile stretches across the stranger's lips. "Doctor, we know you have read Alistair Falcon's journal. We know you have discovered the existence of our organization. The question is, what do you intend to do with this information?" The silence that follows is charged with menace. Heinrich understands that he is at a crossroads in his existence. His response will determine not only his future, but perhaps also that of the Duval sisters and their martyred brother. Upstairs, Claire and Isolde continue their tea, oblivious to the drama unfolding in their father's salon. Their unchanging beauty stands in cruel contrast to the horror that is taking place. In the cellars where Alexander Duval continues to endure his endless torment, the lone silent witness to a diabolical pact that defies both divine and human law, the man in the top hat advances toward Heinrich with the predatory grace of a feline. In the flickering light of the salon, his emaciated features evoke a walking corpse rather than a living being. His two acolytes take positions on either side of the door, cutting off any retreat for the doctor. "Allow me to introduce myself, Dr. Brenner," he says, tipping his top hat slightly. "Baron Lazarus von Kronstadt, Grand Master of the Viennese Lodge of the Estigia Fraternity. My companions are Count Morvek and Sir Aldrich Blackwood, arriving respectively from Prague and London for this meeting." Heinrich casts a desperate glance at Anton, but the old man has turned his eyes away, trembling like a leaf. Heinrich understands that the elder has long been under the sway of these creatures. "Doctor," von Kronstadt continues, "your scientific curiosity is admirable, but it has led you into particularly dangerous territory. Did you know that the Estigia fraternity counts among its members some of the highest-ranking figures in European society?" He produces a scroll from his frock coat and unfurls it with ceremony. "Here are a few names you might recognize. His Majesty Emperor Franz Joseph himself is among our benefactors. The Prince of Metternich, though officially deceased, continues to honor us with his presence during our nocturnal assemblies, not to mention several cardinals of the Roman Curia and a significant portion of the European diplomatic corps." Heinrich feels his knees give way. "You lie, it's impossible. Doctor, do you really believe the Duval family is an isolated case?" Von Kronstadt lets out a shrill, grating laugh. "Across Europe, in the castles of Bavaria, the palaces of St. Petersburg, the manors of London, dozens of our protégés exist in the same state of perpetual preservation as the charming Claire and Isolde." Count Morvek, the man with a pronounced Slavic accent, speaks up. "We have perfected our art over centuries, Doctor. The Duval process is only a primitive variant of our modern techniques. We now maintain underground facilities in every European capital. What do you want from me? Heinrich manages to articulate. Excellent question, von Kronstadt replies, seating himself elegantly in Anton's armchair. You see, we are constantly seeking competent and discreet physicians. Your training makes you particularly valuable for our work. He gestures, and Sir Blackwood steps forward, carrying a black leather case. The Englishman, whose green eyes gleam with an unsettling light, opens the case to reveal surgical instruments of unfamiliar design, a disturbing mix of modern scalpels and ritualistic tools. These instruments will allow you to perform procedures considered impossible by conventional medicine, von Kronstadt explains. Extraction of vital essence, transfer of consciousness, temporal preservation, the possibilities are endless. Heinrich recoils instinctively. I will never be complicit in your abominations. Von Kronstadt's smile hardens. Doctor, you underestimate our power of persuasion. Count Morvek produces a daguerreotype from his pocket and hands it to Heinrich. The image shows a young woman in her early 20s, brunette with light eyes, smiling tenderly at the camera. Heinrich instantly recognizes Anna, his fiancée whom he is to marry next spring. Miss Anna Richter, is that not correct? Murmurs von Kronstadt. A charming young woman, teaching underprivileged children at the charity school in Leopoldstadt. If my information is accurate, Heinrich, he adds, voice cold, and you touch a single hair on her head. Doctor, we are not savages. We prefer voluntary cooperation over brute force. But if you persist in your attitude, we may be compelled to recruit Miss Richter for our experiments. A young woman so pure would make an excellent subject for our studies on the preservation of innocence. Heinrich feels the weight of the threat pressing down. What exactly do you want? First, von Kronstadt says, absolute silence regarding everything you have discovered about the Duvall family and our organization. Second, your collaboration in our scientific endeavors. And third, he pauses theatrically, we would like you to help us perfect the Alexander process. What do you mean? Heinrich asks, horrified. Blackwood speaks in his refined British accent. The current system in place in this house is obsolete. Dr. Alexander Duvall suffers unnecessarily, and the energy yield is lamentable. We have developed techniques to optimize extraction while minimizing discomfort to the donor. Heinrich understands with horror that they are speaking of Alexander as nothing more than a simple equipment to modernize. You are monsters. We are visionaries, von Kronstadt corrected. Humanity has always dreamed of conquering death. We did it. Admittedly, our method demands sacrifices, but look at the result. Claire and Isolde Duval are immortal, frozen forever in their perfect beauty. They do not live, they are only automatons. A technical detail we hope to correct soon. Our research progresses, and we believe that soon we will be able to preserve not only the body, but also the full personality of the subject. Anton, who had remained silent since the arrival of the three men, suddenly lifts his head. You could restore my daughter's consciousness, their memories. Von Kronstadt gives him a condescending look. Mr. Duval, your paternal devotion is touching, but you have never been anything more than a supplier of raw material. Your daughters now belong to us, just as Alexander does. What do you mean? Anton asks, pale. We are relocating the facility, my dear Anton. The fraternity has built an underground complex near Vienna, far more modern than this medieval cellar. Alexander and his sisters will be transferred there in the coming days. Heinrich realizes the full scope of the disaster. You mean to take them to use in further experiments? Precisely. Alexander has demonstrated exceptional resistance to the extraction process. He will serve as a model to create more efficient human batteries. As for Claire and Isolde, they will join our collection of preserved specimens. Your collection? Heinrich asks, his voice trembling. Sister Blackwood harbors a repulsive smile. Doctor, we currently have 73 subjects in perpetual preservation in our European facilities. Men and women of every nationality, all maintained at the age of their greatest beauty. Some date back to the 15th century. The horror of this revelation strikes Heinrich like a slap. He imagines dozens of human beings trapped in their own flesh, artificially kept alive to satisfy the monstrous vanity of their captors. And their number currently, he asks in a white, trembling voice. 218 in operation, Count Morvek replies coldly. Brothers, sisters, parents, children, each preserved specimen requires at least 3 donors for optimal yield. Heinrich understands that he is facing a criminal organization of unimaginable scope. Hundreds of innocents tortured and kept alive to feed the eternal youth of a few privileged individuals. And all of it with the complicity of Europe's highest authorities. Dr. Brenner, von Kronstadt continues, you now have a clear view of our work. Join us, and you will enjoy the same privileges as our other members. Refuse, and you will share Alexander Duvall's fate. Heinrich casts one last look at Anton, silently weeping in his chair. The old man sold his son to save his daughters, and now the fraternity is preparing to take all 3 of his children to turn them into test subjects. I need time to think, Heinrich finally says. Of course, you have until tomorrow night. We will return for your answer. Von Kronstadt rises and adjusts his top hat. Oh, and doctor, do not try to flee Vienna. We have associates in every major city in Europe. The 3 men leave with the same sinister grace as they arrived. As they cross the threshold, von Kronstadt turns back one last time. By the way, doctor, if it can console you, know that Dr. Falcon faced exactly the same choice as you. He refused to cooperate. We found him hanged in his cell at the Steinhoff Asylum a few years later, a very regrettable suicide. The door closes with a sinister slam. Heinrich and Anton remain alone in the salon, crushed by the weight of the revelation. Outside, the storm continues to rage, but it seems trivial compared to the hurricane of terror that has just descended on their lives. Upstairs, Claire and Isolde continue their tea ritual, unaware that their fate has just been sealed. And in the cellars, Alexander Duvall sheds silent tears, perhaps realizing that his ordeal is coming to an end, only to make way for an even worse nightmare. December 24th, Christmas Eve in Vienna, should be a time of peace and reflection. But in Heinrich Brenner's medical office, the atmosphere is that of a war council. The doctor has not slept since his encounter with the Estigia fraternity, and he has made the most difficult decision of his career: to free Alexander Duvall, even if it costs the lives of his sisters or his own. Anna Richter, his fiancée, sits across from him. This 24-year-old woman with chestnut hair and hazel eyes possesses a determination equal to her beauty. When Heinrich revealed everything to her the night before, she did not hesitate for a second to support him in his desperate plan. Heinrich, are you certain this is the only solution? She asks, clasping her hands in his. Simple equipment to modernize. You are monsters. We are visionaries, von Kronstadt corrected. Humanity has always dreamed of defeating death. We have done it. Admittedly, our method requires sacrifices, but look at the result. Claire and Isolde Duval are immortal, frozen forever in their perfect beauty. They do not live, they are only automatons. A technical detail we hope to correct soon. Our research progresses, and we believe that before long we will be able to preserve not only the body but the subject's entire personality as well. Anton, who had remained silent since the three men arrived, suddenly lifted his head. You could restore my daughter's consciousness, their memories. Von Kronstadt cast him a condescending glance. Mr. Duval, your paternal devotion is touching, but you have never been more than a supplier of raw material. Your daughters belong to us now, as does Alexander. What do you mean? Anton asked, pale. We are relocating the facility, my dear Anton. The fraternity has built an underground complex near Vienna, far more modern than this medieval cellar. Alexander and his sisters will be transferred there in the coming days. Heinrich grasped the scale of the disaster. You mean to take them to be used in other experiments? Precisely. Alexander has proven his exceptional resistance to the extraction process. He will serve as a model to create more efficient human batteries. As for Claire and Isolde, they will join our collection of preserved specimens. Your collection? Heinrich asked in a thin voice. Sister Blackwood wore a nauseating smile. Doctor, we currently have 73 subjects in perpetual preservation across our European facilities. Men and women of every nationality, all kept at the age of their greatest beauty. Some date back to the 15th century. The horror of that revelation hit Heinrich like a slap. He pictured dozens of human beings imprisoned in their own flesh, kept artificially alive to satisfy the monstrous vanity of their captors. And how many in operation? He asked, voice white. 218 active, Count Morvek replied coldly. Brothers, sisters, parents, children, each preserved specimen requires at least 3 donors for optimal yield. Heinrich understood he was facing a criminal organization of unimaginable scale. Hundreds of innocents tortured and kept alive to feed the eternal youth of a privileged few, all with the complicity of Europe's highest authorities. Dr. Brenner, von Kronstadt continued, you now have a clear picture of our work. Join us and you will enjoy the same privileges as our other members. Refuse, and you will share Alexander Duvall's fate. Heinrich looked one last time at Anton, who sobbed silently in his armchair. The old man had sold his son to save his daughters, and now the fraternity prepared to tear all 3 of his children away to turn them into experimental subjects. I need time to think, Heinrich finally said. Naturally, you have until tomorrow evening. We will return for your answer. Von Kronstadt rose and put on his top hat. Oh, and doctor, do not try to flee Vienna. We have associates in every major city in Europe. The 3 men left with the same sinister grace with which they had arrived. As they crossed the threshold, von Kronstadt turned once more. By the way, doctor, if it offers you any consolation, know that Dr. Falcon faced exactly the same choice as you. He refused to cooperate. We found him hanged in his cell at the Steinhoff Asylum a few years later, a very regrettable suicide. The door slammed shut with a sinister bang. Heinrich and Anton remained alone in the salon, crushed by the weight of the revelation. Outside, the storm raged on, but it seemed trivial compared to the hurricane of terror that had just descended on their lives. Upstairs, Claire and Isolde continued their tea ritual, unaware that their fate had just been sealed. In the cellars, Alexander Duvall shed his silent tears, maybe understanding that his ordeal was nearing an end, only to give way to an even greater nightmare. December 24th, Christmas Eve in Vienna, should have been a time of peace and reflection. But in Heinrich Brenner's medical office, the atmosphere was that of a war council. The doctor had not slept since his encounter with the Estigia fraternity, and he had taken the hardest decision of his career. Free Alexander Duvall, even if it meant costing the lives of his sisters and possibly his own. Anna Richter, his fiancée, sat opposite him. This 24-year-old woman, chestnut-haired with hazel eyes, had a determination to match her beauty. When Heinrich had revealed everything to her the night before, she had not hesitated for a second to back him in his desperate plan. "Heinrich, are you sure this is the only solution?" she asked, clasping her hands in his. "Anna, I've spent the last 2 days searching for an alternative. There is none. If we let the fraternity take Alexander and his sisters to their facilities, they will vanish forever. At least by acting now, we give them a chance to die free." Anna nodded gravely. "And for us, von Kronstadt will not spare us afterward. I've planned our escape. One of my former medical school colleagues now works in London. He will help us settle in England under false names." Heinrich rose and checked his briefcase one last time. Scalpels, forceps, vials of reagent, and most dangerously, several sticks of dynamite he had managed to procure from workers on the new railway lines. His plan was simple and terrifying. Free Alexander from his torment, then destroy the Duval mansion and every trace of the abomination within. "Anna, it's still time to back out. If you stay in Vienna and pretend you know nothing," Heinrich stopped her firmly. "We promised each other for better or worse. I will not abandon you now." They kissed tenderly, aware this could be the last time. Wrapped in their winter coats, they set out onto the Ringstrasse beneath a crystal-clear starry sky. Vienna lay asleep under its blanket of snow, oblivious to the drama about to unfold. The Duval mansion loomed in the dark, its lit windows forming golden rectangles on the Baroque facade. Heinrich and Anna circled the building to reach the service entrance. The doctor still had the keys Anton had entrusted to him on his first visit and slipped silently into the kitchens. "Which way?" Anna whispered. "Upstairs first. I want to see Claire and Isolde one last time before the end." He crept up the service stair, avoiding the creaky steps. On the second floor, Heinrich gently opened the blue salon door. Despite the late hour, the two sisters sat in their usual places, taking their eternal tea under the gaslight's golden glow. Anna stifled a cry of horror at seeing Claire and Isolde. Their perfect, time-frozen beauty was profoundly disturbing. They looked up at the intruders with their habitual mechanical politeness. "Good evening," Claire said with her immaculate smile. "What a pleasant surprise. Would you like to join us?" Heinrich stepped forward slowly. In the dim light, the sisters looked more than ever like porcelain dolls, graceful movements, melodious voices, perfection emptied of any true humanity. "Claire, Isolde," he said softly, "do you remember your brother Alexander?" The two women exchanged a blank look. "Alexander," Isolde repeated, tilting her head. "I do not believe I know that name." Heinrich felt tears well in his eyes. These women, who had literally fed on their brother's suffering for 43 years, had even forgotten his existence. The fraternity had erased the memory of their crime. "Forgive us," he said, bowing. "We are in the wrong house." Anna and he slipped back down toward the cellars. In the Duval corridors they passed a few servants about their nightly chores, but no one paid them any attention. Heinrich had always been treated like family. They finally reached the massive iron door guarding the secret chamber. Heinrich inserted the ornate key and pushed the leaf open. The medicinal stench hit them at once. Anna saw Alexander and instinctively raised a hand to her mouth to stifle a scream. The man on the black marble table turned his eyes to them, and in his look they read an infinite plea. "My God," Anna breathed, "how can anyone do this to another human?" Heinrich stepped to the table and examined the complex apparatus keeping Alexander alive. The tubes entering his arms and chest pulsed with his heartbeat, carrying a reddish fluid toward the distillation flasks. "Alexander," the doctor whispered, "I will free you, but you must understand this will mean your death. Blink once if you accept." Without hesitation, Alexander blinked once. Then, with superhuman effort, he shaped a silent thank you with his lips. Heinrich took his instruments from the case. "Anna, step back. What I'm about to do will not be pretty." But Anna stepped closer instead. "No, Heinrich, if he must die, let him not be alone." She took Alexander's hand. He managed to squeeze her fingers with a slight pressure. For the first time in decades, someone offered him compassionate human contact. Heinrich began by cutting the tubes feeding the distillation apparatus. A dark liquid spilled across the stone floor, and the flasks immediately ceased their boiling. Then, with surgical precision, he removed the catheters that penetrated Alexander's body. With each tube withdrawn, the martyr's face relaxed a little. For the first time in 43 years, his eyes expressed something other than agony, an immense relief. "Alexander," Anna murmured, stroking his brow, "you are free now." The man tried to speak, but no sound came from his throat. 43 years of enforced silence had destroyed his vocal cords. But in his eyes, Heinrich and Anna read infinite gratitude. Gradually, Alexander's complexion began to change. The artificial perfection of his features faded, replaced by the peaceful expression of someone who can finally die. Upstairs, a disturbing phenomenon occurred. Claire and Isolde, still seated before their tea, began to age before their eyes. Their chestnut hair sprouted streaks of gray. Wrinkles formed at the corners of their eyes. Their hands withered slowly, yet they did not seem to notice, continuing their habitual gestures mechanically even as their bodies made up the 4 lost decades. In the secret chamber, Alexander closed his eyes for the last time. His face, freed from the expression of perpetual agony, finally took on the serene aspect of one at rest. "He is dead," Heinrich noted, taking his pulse. After years of torture, he was finally free. Anna wept silently, still holding the dead man's hand. He had been so young, his life had been ahead of him. He had sacrificed it for his sisters. "Now we must ensure his sacrifice was not in vain," Heinrich said. He took the sticks of dynamite from his case and began to place them strategically around the secret chamber. "Anna, go up and get out of the house immediately. In 5 minutes this whole building will blow." "And you?" she asked. "I must first make sure all the apparatus are destroyed. Go, I'll join you." Anna hesitated, then kissed Heinrich one last time before running up toward the exit. The doctor lit the first fuse and watched the flame creep toward the explosives. Then he bent over Alexander and whispered, "Rest in peace, my friend. Your ordeal is over." He climbed the stairs 4 at a time and crossed the mansion's corridors toward the exit. Passing the blue salon, he glimpsed Claire and Isolde. They now looked like women of 60, yet continued their tea ritual undisturbed. Unaware of their accelerated aging, Heinrich stepped out the front door just as the first explosion sounded. A ball of fire erupted from the cellars. followed immediately by other detonations that rocked the building. He reached Anna on the opposite sidewalk and pulled her into his arms as the Duval mansion was engulfed in flames. The fire climbed toward the starry sky, creating a terrible, magnificent spectacle. "Look," Anna cried, pointing to a second-floor window. In the frame they saw the silhouettes of Claire and Isolde. Even at that distance Heinrich could see they were now old women, hair white as snow, bodies stooped under the weight of the decades reclaimed. The most disturbing thing was that they continued to gesticulate as if still taking tea. Their mechanical movements persisted even in the face of impending death. "They don't even understand what is happening to them," Heinrich murmured. 43 years of artificial existence had turned them into automatons. The flames reached the second floor. The two figures vanished in the blaze, taking with them the secret of their accursed eternal youth. Heinrich felt a mixture of sorrow and relief. Claire and Isolde had at last joined their brother in eternal rest, but their respite was short-lived. The clatter of hooves on the cobblestones made them turn. A black carriage drawn by two horses was approaching fast. Heinrich immediately recognized the occupants, von Kronstadt and his two acolytes, drawn by the fire. "On a run, they're coming," she cried. The couple dashed through Vienna's snowy streets, pursued by the Baron's furious shouts. Behind them the Duval mansion continued to burn, lighting the Christmas night with an apocalyptic glow. "Brenner," von Kronstadt bellowed from his carriage, "you destroyed 43 years of work. You will not escape us." Heinrich and Anna ran until they were exhausted through the lanes of the aristocratic quarter. Their footsteps rang on the frozen cobbles while the carriage closed relentlessly. The doctor knew Vienna well, but his pursuers had the advantage of speed. "Here," he gasped, pulling Anna into a narrow alley where the carriage could not pass. They burst out onto the Graben, the city's main artery. Even at that late hour, a few passers-by still wandered home from midnight mass. Heinrich and Anna melted into the crowd, hoping to lose their pursuers. But von Kronstadt and his men had abandoned their carriage and were now pursuing them on foot. In the gaslight, Heinrich saw their faces distorted by rage. He understood that they would not hesitate to kill, even. Amid the crowd, "Anna, the station, we have to reach the station." He heads toward the bustle. Heinrich hopes to catch the first train to Salzburg, the first step toward England. But halfway there, Anna trips on an icy patch. "My ankle," she groans. "I think it's broken." Heinrich helps her up, but she can no longer run. Behind them, the three men of the fraternity draw closer, their black coats snapping in the icy wind. "Anna, listen to me," Heinrich says urgently. "There's a boarding house at the corner of Nerstrasse run by Freuer. Go there and hide. I'll draw them away." "No, Heinrich, I won't leave you. You don't have a choice. If we stay together, they'll kill us both. At least if you survive, you can bear witness to what happened here." He kisses her passionately one last time. "I love you, Anna. Never forget that all of this was to free the innocents." Before she can protest, Heinrich dashes toward St. Stephen's Cathedral, drawing the attention of their pursuers. Von Kronstadt and his men give chase, leaving Anna to hobble toward the relative safety of the boarding house. The chase winds through the dark alleys around the Stephansdom. Heinrich knows every stone of this district, but he feels his strength waning. The night's emotional toll and the frantic flight are exhausting him. Finally, he takes refuge in the cathedral cemetery among ancient snow-covered graves. The deathly silence here stands in cruel contrast to the drama unfolding. Von Kronstadt and his accomplices slowly encircle him, their silhouettes cutting against the gravestones. The Baron draws a pistol from his coat, his cadaverous face twisted with relentless hatred. "Dr. Brenner," he hisses, "you have made a monumental mistake. Alexander Duval was our most precious specimen. Do you know how long it will take to rebuild our research?" "An eternity, I hope," Heinrich replies defiantly. "What you did was an abomination against nature." "Against nature," von Kronstadt bursts out in a grating laugh. "Doctor, we have conquered death itself. We have given humanity the greatest gift, immortality. At the cost of hundreds of tortured innocents, you are nothing but vampires disguised as scientists." Count Morvek approaches, a cruel smile on his lips. "Doctor, your ignorance is touching. Do you really think we were the first to discover these techniques? Throughout history, the powerful have always found ways to preserve their youth. We merely perfect ancient methods. And now," adds Sister Blackwood, "you will pay for your interference." Von Kronstadt raises his pistol and points it at Heinrich. "Doctor, any last words?" Heinrich glances one last time toward the Duval mansion, its last flames dying in the distance. A vast satisfaction fills him, thinking of Alexander, Claire, and Isolde finally at peace. "Yes," he says firmly, "Alexander Duval is free, and one day all your crimes will be exposed to the world." The gunshot echoes in the cemetery silence. Heinrich collapses into the snow, his blood slowly spreading around him. His last thoughts are of Anna, hopefully safe. Von Kronstadt holsters his weapon and turns to his companions. "Let's deal with the body. It must disappear without a trace." But just as he approaches the corpse, screams erupt from the nearby streets. "Fire! Fire! The Duval mansion is burning!" Municipal guards rush to the blaze, their lanterns sweeping the alleys. Von Kronstadt and his men are forced to flee, abandoning Heinrich's body in the cemetery. On the morning of December 25th, the police discover two crime scenes: the smoking ruins of the Duval mansion, with four charred bodies in the cellars, Anton, Claire, Isolde, and an unidentified fourth individual, and the corpse of Dr. Heinrich Brenner in St. Stephen's Cemetery. The official investigation concludes accidental fire and a violent crime with no apparent connection. But Anna Richter, sheltering with Free Müller, now knows the truth about the Duval sisters. A few months later, she will leave Vienna for England, taking with her the documents Heinrich had compiled on the Estigia fraternity. She will devote the rest of her life to documenting the organization's crimes, hoping that one day justice will be served. In the decades that follow, strange fires will mysteriously strike multiple aristocratic homes across Europe: Bavarian castles, St. Petersburg palaces, London manors, all hiding secrets similar to those of the Duvalls. The Estigia fraternity will adapt its methods, becoming stealthier, more mobile. But the sacrifices of Heinrich Brenner and Alexander Duval were not in vain. They proved that even the most terrible abominations can be fought with courage and humanity. Snow continues to fall over Vienna on that Christmas morning of 1871, covering the ashes of the Duval mansion with a white blanket. Somewhere in the sleeping city, Anna Richter weeps for the man she loved, vowing to continue her fight against darkness. The case of the Val sisters is closed, but its legacy endures. Some secrets, no matter how terrifying, cannot remain buried forever. There will always be men and women brave enough to face horror in the name of justice and freedom. In the secret archives of the Estigia fraternity, Heinrich Brenner's name is added to the list of neutralized disruptors. but they are unaware that Anna now possesses all the evidence to expose their existence to the world. The story of the sisters who never aged comes to an end, but it is only the first chapter in a much larger struggle between light and darkness, humanity and monstrosity disguised as scientific progress. The ruins of the Duvall mansion are razed in the spring of 1872. Today, a small public garden stands in its place, where Viennese children play, unaware that beneath their feet lie the ashes of one of Europe's darkest mysteries. Yeah,